We all want to understand the world around us, get a handle on things that really matter, and do it all as efficiently as possible. So today, we're going to be diving into something that's pretty common these days, but maybe not something we talk about enough. Feeling lonely. And I mean, it's weird because you think with everyone online and connected all the time, we wouldn't feel so isolated. But that's kind of where we are. It's like this hidden tax on our lives.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is how much is actually written about this. Like the stuff we've been looking at goes way beyond just feeling a bit down, you know? It's got these tendrils reaching out into all these parts of our lives and affecting us in ways we don't even think about.
Exactly. That's what we're going to try to unpack today. Like, what's the real cost of all this loneliness, and what can we actually do about it? I mean, first off, it's just kind of crazy, right? We've got all these ways to connect with people instantly. Like, we're talking billions of people on social media.
Right.
But we're actually seeing less of each other face to face, less of the stuff that used to, build our relationships. I feel like these virtual spaces, they do connect us in a way, but they don't have the same depth, the same
Nuance, I think that's the word. It's like you can trade information online, sure, but you're not getting that same kind of emotional support that you do when you're actually with people. And it's that missing piece that starts to impact our health. I mean, it's not just a statistical thing, this link between loneliness and heart problems. It's like your body actually reacts to being isolated. Some studies show that being lonely long-term sets off this inflammatory response in your body, almost like what happens when you smoke cigarettes.
And that's what's so wild, right? Like, loneliness isn't just this feeling in your head. It's legitimately linked to some scary health risks. Heart disease, stroke, even dementia. There are studies, these long-term studies, that show that chronic loneliness, it's basically like smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of the risk it poses. It's pretty serious stuff. And it makes you think about the wider impact, too. I mean, if it's hitting us that hard individually, it's got to be affecting our wallets as well, right?
Absolutely. It's like this whole other economic burden we have to deal with. For one thing, lonely people tend to spend their money differently. They're more likely to rely on those delivery services instead of going out to local businesses.
Which makes sense, right? You're not going out, you're not interacting.
Plus, some economists who look at this stuff say that lonely people are more likely to buy things to try and fill that emotional void. And then you've got this whole subscription economy that's great for convenience, but also keeps us in these little bubbles, Fewer chances to just bump into people and have those random conversations that can spark something new.
Yeah, and it's interesting how this all plays out in the workplace, too. When people feel connected at work, they tend to be more motivated, more creative. It boosts productivity for everyone.
For sure. And loneliness, it does the opposite. Makes people withdraw, leads to burnout. So productivity takes a hit, which is bad news for everyone, not just the individual, but the whole company, the whole economy.
And on top of all that, you have the healthcare costs that go up because of all those loneliness-related illnesses we talked about. So people are stretched thin financially, and the whole healthcare system feels the pressure. And it's not just our wallets and our bodies. There's a societal impact, too. When people are isolated, they're more likely to get caught up in these extreme ideologies or narratives that prey on fear and division.
These groups kind of exploit that basic need to belong that so many people are missing in their lives.
And there's a long history of this too, right?
Yeah.
Like when you look back, those times when people felt really disconnected socially, they often went hand in hand with some pretty serious political instability.
Yeah, and some of the stuff we read, like Hannah Arendt, she's a political philosopher, she argued that this deep loneliness, this feeling of being totally isolated, it made people way more vulnerable to these mass movements. When you don't feel grounded in a community, it's easy to latch onto these strong voices, to find your identity in them.
And it makes you think about how isolation impacts our personal growth too. If you're not having those regular, meaningful interactions with other people, it's got to be hard to really grow as a person. Like so many of those aha moments, they come from talking things through with someone, sharing experiences.
Exactly. If you're isolated, you're missing out on those chances to learn and grow. And I think it can also stifle creativity and make it harder to develop a growth mindset. You get stuck in your own way of thinking because you're not exposed to other perspectives. Like, imagine you have this friend who's really good at giving you honest feedback, helps you see those blind spots you might have.
It's so important.
Without that, without those human mirrors, it's tough to grow. And you also miss out on the benefits of collaborating with others, being held accountable for your goals, even just learning how to navigate those tricky social situations that we all encounter.
And isn't it interesting how much of this isolation comes from our own desire to avoid discomfort? Like, let's face it, interacting with other people takes effort. You got to be patient. You got to compromise. And you got to be willing to be a little vulnerable.
It's true. And it feels like today, everything is about instant gratification. We're conditioned to avoid discomfort whenever possible.
And we're seeing that play out in so many ways. Ghosting people instead of having those tough conversations. Curating these perfect online personas to avoid any kind of criticism. Choosing to do things alone rather than risk those awkward social encounters. It's like we're constantly trying to escape any situation that might make us feel a little uncomfortable.
And that's how you end up paying this isolation tax. You slowly lose those social skills, those abilities that let you navigate real-world relationships.
So how do we stop paying this tax?
Well, it starts with a real shift in our thinking. We need to develop what you could call a social investment mindset. It's about making those human connections a real priority in your life.
And what does that look like in practice?
A few things, really. It's about valuing those micro interactions, that quick chat with the barista, asking your colleague how their day is going, even just a quick phone call to a friend. Those little moments add up.
Yeah, I like that. It's not about these grand gestures. It's about making those small efforts consistently.
Exactly. Another thing is to actively choose experiences that you share with others instead of always defaulting to those solo activities. Invite some friends over, get involved in something in your community.
And what about all the digital stuff? Any tips for navigating that?
Digital minimalism is a big one. Put the phone down, step away from the screens, and you'll naturally have more time to actually connect with people. Even scheduling some breaks from social media can help you reconnect with the world around you.
And I think the last piece is learning to be okay with a little discomfort. Like growing as a person socially, it means putting yourself out there, and that's going to involve some awkward moments. But if you can reframe those moments, see them as part of building deeper connections, it can make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
So the bottom line is this isolation tax, it's not just some abstract idea. It has real consequences for our well-being, for our economy, for our society, and for us as individuals. But the good news is we have the power to change things. We can choose to prioritize those genuine human connections.
Yeah, building real relationships and communities, it's not just a nice to have, it's fundamental to a healthy and fulfilling life. And the way things are going now with loneliness on the rise, it's just not sustainable. Connecting with others, it's like this vital resource, and when we invest in it, the payoff is huge.
So after all this, after learning about this isolation tax, I want you to think about this. What choices are you going to make to invest in those real meaningful connections? Think about how much you value those connections and the incredible things they bring to your life.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Deep Thoughts Podcast. I hope you found insights and inspiration to take with you on your journey of self-growth. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on new releases and exclusive content. See you next time, where we'll continue to help you grow and explore your full potential.